Hey there, I'm Brian, founder of the Grief for Growth community. If you're navigating loss and seeking a place of healing, connection, and growth, we're here for you. Join us to explore life, death, and everything in between. Together, we'll find hope, strength, and the tools to keep moving forward. Visit grieftogrowth.com. That's grief, the numeral 2, growth.com/community, and join for free. I hope to see you inside. Have a great day. And now, onto the podcast.
LifeBooks is a personal venture of mine that I began with the purpose to preserve my dad's memory, his legacy, everything that anyone could share about him into a hardbound book. The guy just gave everything, his life for us, and for him to be forgotten, for his story, for the foundation that it was to my family, for it not to be known, for his story to be lost in vain, really hit hard with me in terms of it being like a second death to him. Preserving his story, I wanted to write about him. I started thinking about writing a book, and it's pretty hard to write a book. One person write an entire book, it's a lot. And I also knew that my family, my friends, siblings, and my father, they would have stories of my dad that I wouldn't have. Stories that represented his life, his legacy, his commitment, his benevolence, and those stories that are the life that he lived, I want them to live on.
Close your eyes and imagine. What if the things in life that cause us the greatest pain, the things that bring us grief, are challenges? Challenges designed to help us grow, to ultimately become what we were always meant to be. We feel like we've been buried, but what if, like a seed, we've been planted? And having been planted, we grow to become a mighty tree. Now, open your eyes. Open your eyes to this way of viewing life. Come with me as we explore your true, infinite, eternal nature. This is Grief to Growth, and I am your host, Brian Smith. Hey there, I'm Brian Smith. I'm your host of Grief to Growth, and whether you're a returning listener or you're joining us for the first time, I want to welcome you to the program. This podcast is all about navigating the complexities of life, finding meaning, especially in our most challenging moments. And together we explore why we're here, where we're going, what happens during our time on Earth, all those little things like that. Today we have an inspiring story that touches on all of these big questions. I'm joined by Matt Jacobson, a young man whose journey is deeply personal, yet I think it's universally relatable. Matt grew up in Southern California working in his family's mattress store, and his life took an unexpected turn when he received a phone call while studying abroad that his father had been hospitalized. And days later, Matt found himself stepping into his father's shoes, not just in the business, but in honoring his father's memory in a powerful way. Matt is the founder of LifeBooks. It's a company born from the love and legacy of his father. And it's really more than just a business. It's a deeply personal project that allows families and friends to capture and preserve the stories of their loved ones, creating beautiful hardbound tributes that can endure for generations. And when Matt called me up to tell me about LifeBooks, I was like, you've got to come on the podcast because I really want people to hear your story and hear about this company that you're starting, because I think it's really going to impact a lot of people's lives. So in today's episode, we're going to explore the challenges that Matt faced, losing his father and stepping into the family business, and how that paved the way for where he is today. We'll talk about how he dealt with the loss, the unexpected responsibilities he faced, and all those things. But before we dive in, I want to remind you that after the episode is over, to go to grieftogrowth.com/community and continue the conversation there. So with that, I want to welcome to Grief to Growth, Matt Jacobson.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for that warm introduction. I really appreciate it. Kind of going over this story just where you left off. LifeBooks is a personal venture of mine that I began with the purpose to preserve my dad's memory, his legacy, and everything that anyone could share about him into a hardbound book. The beginning of this story really started, as you said, I was studying abroad and I got the call that my dad had been admitted back into the hospital. Just before leaving to Europe, my dad was in remission from esophageal cancer. It had been 2 years since the cancer had come back, and we actually went on a walk just before I left, about a 5-6 mile hike. And I look back on that hike, and I know for sure he knew that the cancer had come back, and he wanted to put on a show. He wanted to show his strength to me. That way I left. So because it was only 3 weeks into being into Europe where I got the call to come home. So surely he knew. And, another testament to, our loved one's strengths and what they sacrifice, him knowing the hardship, having to say goodbye to me, not knowing if I'd come back and he'd see me. He knew that. And that struck home with me later on when I realized there's no way he did those 5-6 miles and I was more tired than him without having to know something. So that thoughts like that in terms of sacrifice, when I'd gotten the call and I'd come home instantly in my dad's shoes working at the family mattress store. He had ran the store for 26 years by himself, no help, never came home complaining, just always excited to see his boys and be able to spend time with us. And then when I was in his shoes shortly after he passed, doing his work, which was 60, 70-hour weeks, coupled with school, and then just the entire grief environment that my brother and I were in, every day felt like a marathon, and it was extremely exhausting. Weeks passed, and I began to really realize the shoes that I had to fill and what had been sacrificed to allow for the life I had lived, for the freedom that my family had, all of it from my dad, all of it from his sacrifice, and coming home late at night, I'd be driving home from work thinking, gosh, like the sacrifice, the commitment, zero appetite for complaining. The guy just gave everything, his life for us. And for him to be forgotten, for his story, for the foundation that it was to my family, for it not to be known, for his story to be lost in vain, really hit hard with me in terms of it being like a second death to him. Because how could I have, I'm in his shoes, I'm seeing what he had to deal with as a man in life and what he had to do for his family. And for all of that, in a generation or two, if not shared, will be completely forgotten. And I know that because my grandfather his story was shared to me via, one or two stories, but not much to the point where I'd be able to share who my grandfather was to my son. And knowing that, to think, who would my nephew and niece grow up to know my father by, their grandfather? How would my unborn child, a child to come, grow up to know my father if there were no stories? And if decades pass and people don't share or don't remember, and that life is lost. It became more of a purpose, preserving his story. I wanted to write a book. I wanted to write a book about him. The idea of LifeBooks followed suit when I started thinking about writing a book, and it's pretty hard to write a book. One person write an entire book, it's a lot. And I also knew that my family, my friends, siblings of my father, they would have stories of my dad that I wouldn't have. Stories that represented his life, his legacy, his commitment, his benevolence, and those stories that are the life that he lived, I want them to live on. So in efforts to capture those memories and those stories, I created LifeBooks, which is an online platform. I've been working 4 years with my developer and getting this ready, but it's an online platform where you can sign up and invite your family and friends to join you in a creative where you can contribute photos, stories, prayers, shared memories, and more. And on the platform, all the contributions are collected, formatted, and proofed by our engine. So there's no scrapbooking. Family and friends can just hop in, type a story, submit, and move on to another story. They don't have to worry about structure, organization, text placement, because all of that is done by our book engine, making it easy for family and friends to collectively contribute into a single book. Further, in the book engine, we understand writing can be difficult. So there's tools using GPT AI functions so you can rephrase your writing, check for spelling, check for grammar, and everything will be tuned in our engine afterwards. So no matter the amount of contributions, 200 photos, 500 photos, 50 photos. It doesn't matter. We organize the book so it's cohesive into a 100-page hardbound print. That way, if it's 5 contributors or 35 contributors, everyone's stories are in the book that can be held and shared and read for generations to come. LifeBooks has turned into, from the pursuit of wanting to preserve my dad's book, to now becoming wanting to ensure that our loved ones' memories, our legacy, the generation before us, is not forgotten. In terms of the American way of death, my background is finance. It was not in the commemorative, in the grief space, and I have become a little bit personally fired up by the idea that our American way of death has been commercialized in a very transactional, quick manner, where after my dad passed, it was shortly after his funeral, then his memorial, then his funeral, and then it was done. It was over. There was no anniversary. There was no second, third year, fourth year, nothing set up for us to come together as a family. I don't feel like this was done without intent. I think this was done with intent, because what better way to get you back as a worker bee than forget your loved one who had passed and get back to work? I think that's wrong. I think it's profoundly flawed in the fundamentals we need as our legacy, our heritage, our family are part of how we remain as virtuous individuals. That's how we gather. That's how we grow. It's with what we've learned, where we came from. If you take that away, you're just left with this isolated generation, more isolated than the next. And LifeBooks, to me, has become a more profound pursuit in making sure that nobody is forgotten and that everyone wants to live a great life, because they know that they're going to be written about in a book for their family, and they want to make sure that book is great.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey there, I'm testing out a new feature. I'd love to get your feedback on it. It's called Fan Mail, and you can send me a message right from the show notes of the podcast. So look for the link that says send me a text. You can ask a question for a future podcast. You can suggest a guest or just give me any feedback you want. Just remember, it is one way. I can't text you back, and I will not have your name, your email address, or your phone number unless you include it in the message. Let me know what you think. It's awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Matt. So, tell me more about your father. It sounds like an incredible guy. You're an amazing individual. So I imagine that a lot of that was passed along to you from your father. So tell me about him, about his character and memories you have of him growing up.
He's awesome. Old school businessman, everything in his head type of guy. Grew up in Chicago. We big family focus on books and academics. My dad once taught me, anything I haven't taught you, you can learn from a book. There are many great men out there that know more than me, and you can learn from them too. And he always pushed me to read and to pursue school, and knowing that what education breeds is your ability to see the doors that are opportunity, your willingness to take them. He was an entrepreneur, single father, 24 years running a shop by himself. He was a risk taker. He had a very, very free spirit, would not work for a company, just wanted to work on his own. So just, as many of the boomers were, just very hardworking. You can't make them like how they used to be. They grew up post-war era, and he showed it. Very virtuous man that really lived his life once he had kids for his kids. The sacrifice was the acceptance of his life was now committed for his kids. And I know that because he wouldn't have, for the work year, he would take Christmas and Thanksgiving off. That's it. That's it. He would be there every other day of the year. That commitment, it's not because he needed the wealth, not because he was greedful. We lived a very frugal life. My dad was fairly frugal Jewish household. We didn't serve beyond our needs. And with that, he knew what he was conserving for. He knew what he was saving for, creating a business so that he passed it down to his kids. So his kids would have an opportunity, because it is a very competitive world. And with that, my brother has been blessed, and we built the store up so that he can work that. And I'm pursuing LifeBooks, and many doors have opened since, because of his sacrifice. So I have nothing but great things to say about the guy, because there's nothing I didn't learn from him that there's nothing he could have shared to me before he passed. And the one thing he did before he passed is he told me, if there's anything, it's going to be in books. And he always told me if I read a book and I learned one thing, then it was worth it. Because oftentimes, if you had to write down everything you knew on pieces of paper, how many pages would you fill? And really great golden nuggets are found from reading. It's really hard to write. And that's likely what inspired LifeBooks, because I love reading. I love books. And that's likely what brought me back to him.
Well, I think it's great that, and as I was saying in the introduction, when you and I first met and you were telling about this, because I've interviewed so many people and I've talked to people who have written books about their loved ones. I've talked to people who have actually even tried to put together projects to try to remember their loved ones and various things. And there are challenges. Most of us are not writers. We don't really know how to format a book and stuff like that. But the other thing I've learned from talking to people is we as human beings are multidimensional, and everybody's got a different view of us, whether it's a sister or mother or brother, a wife, aunt, uncle, nephew. And when my daughter passed, I realized other people had different stories about her that I didn't know. And what I love about LifeBooks is that it's such a collaborative thing, right? It's not like I have to remember everything and put everything into it. It brings everybody together to share those little tidbits.
That is the biggest advantage with LifeBooks, because it's such a difficult thing to do, is to sit down and write on behalf of your loved one, to do it alongside of your family and friends, to see them share stories along the way that you haven't heard. You really just propel inspiration in terms of, there's a time where I was at the baseball game, or there was a time where there's a lesson learned, and I reflect from that lesson. I have this story to share. So the collaborative nature in it, the more people that get involved, the more enriched the book becomes. And the more enriched it is, the more it's representative of the one's life. Absolutely, really excited. And there's another feature that allows you, we went over, Brian, for you to invite to collaborate within a story. So if there's a story with about a loved one, maybe it's a particular setting, a wedding event, and you wanted to invite others within the creative to join you and submit their story at that time of the wedding, you can invite them to collaborate with you within the same story.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's really fascinating, because it's such a combination of what's only available now because of technology, being able to prevent short runs of quality books. And we'll talk more in detail about the book, that you actually get later on, but also the AI that you're using to help people to give prompts for how to, because people sit down with the blank page, they don't know what to write, for correcting that and stuff like that. But I don't know if you remember this, is a few years ago, there was an ad, because we're all taking pictures on our phone now.
Yeah.
And they were showing pictures on the phone, and they're like, the pictures were trapped because we don't print pictures anymore. And what people are realizing is, I've got thousands and thousands of pictures, but nobody ever looks at them. So being able to take these memories and to put them into a hard copy again, kind of going old school a little bit, makes it more accessible.
The book, like you said, the old school, the book, it has a certain nostalgic factor. I find going online memorials, there's a certain sediment that's missing where to have the physical, tangible book you're holding, if I don't live where my dad was buried, and to have his book with me as I travel, to see the photos, like you said, that have been hidden in my photos for quite some time, uh, that became that became a huge focus of it being a physical book, shortly after the Lifebook idea came up, because knowing for it to be something you hold and pass down, and with that being able to pass down a book manufacturing was another hurdle that you kind of mentioned, Brian.
Mm-hmm.
Getting a book that is something that could last 100 years is quite difficult, in that most books bindings, and the binding is what tells whether or not the book will be durable and last the test of time. But most books bindings are glued. The pages are glued together to the binding, and they're glued together within the seam as well. With glued bindings, you really only have a 5-10 year period of use, and with the book, before the pages start to pull out and the binding starts to wither, and the book in time, in short, won't be something that you could share with the next generation. It would call for a reprint of sorts. When we looked into manufacturing, the main focus was getting a hardcover book that's section sewn, smice sewn, also known as smice sewn print. When you get section sewn books, the only manufacturers that want to do a section sewn book are manufacturers that are producing books of 250, 500. They all have minimum order quantities. These are the books that people go and get published, and they're on the shelves. Now, if you want to go get a custom hardbound book, it's really easy to get one with a glued binding one-off. It is nearly impossible to get a section sewn book one-off from any manufacturer. There's too much labor. The machine costs too much for them to have that set up, and they're working with buyers, not consumers, of books. So we've been really lucky to get a American manufacturer to really believe and buy into the idea of LifeBooks, what we're doing, and to be able to fulfill hardbound, smice sewn books at a very cost-effective rate, so that we could go into business. Because if it wasn't for them, we would otherwise have to find manufacturing perhaps overseas, and that becomes another issue in terms of privacy. And privacy is very important for LifeBooks, so we're happy to keep everything in the States.
Yeah, I think you can tell you've really thought this out. And when you and I talked earlier, and I've actually been participating a little bit with the beta, and as the software is getting set up and everything, you've thought through all these things, and I know it's still developing, it's getting better all the time, but those features that you've already got, we talked about the collaboration, being able to invite other people in. So I'm not responsible for the whole thing. And prompts, because you made me think of things like I might have thought about, like share a poem that you shared with somebody, or a particular event that you went to, a wedding, or a picnic, or a trip to Disneyland, or whatever. And then also the fact that the AI actually kind of does all the putting it together and formatting and all that. So it takes all that off the hands of the person. So all you have to really concentrate on is telling the story.
All you have to concentrate is telling the story. Exactly. Yeah, we wanted the book engine to be seamless, so that users could focus on what's important, and that's capturing their loved one's story. The period to contribute, oftentimes we are now going to open up, if people want to, say, participate in an annual event. Maybe there's a reunion and they didn't get to create the book or be a part of the first publishing. We'll also be set up on an annual basis where you'll be able to open the creative and add more to it, and do an annual reprint if needed, so that the book, over years, as family come together and there's more memories and more people engaged in wanting to create this book, the book can go through a reprint in the future if need be. If there's anyone that missed out on contributing, or if there were any stories missed, and you wanted them to be fit in print. So there is in that record, we weren't going to maintain, but because we were able to keep manufacturing in the States, we're able to maintain the books with the shop and everything safe, so that if there ever is need for a reprint, we can offer that. But yeah, the book has been an absolute. The goal is to get the books in hands as we're in the beta during holiday. And once books are in hands from the beta, as Brian, you mentioned, you're participating in, we are going to spend a little time getting some feedback and doing some work, but then we'll be launching the official launch likely in February in 2025 for others to join and create a book for their loved one.
I think, I think that's, like I said, I was really excited when you told me about it, because I think like we all want to remember our loved ones, and we all want others to remember our loved ones. And I think about, like, my daughter was 15 when she passed, and I have another daughter who's 3 years older. So when my daughter Kayla has children, they'll hear about their Aunt Shayna, but it'll be someone that they've never actually met in person, right? And we can tell stories, but wouldn't it be really cool to have like a coffee table book that they could leaf through, and that would prompt, more. You can't capture everything in a book, of course, but that would prompt more conversation. So I see this as something that, we've got family photo albums now, and those are really great. My parents just had their 65th wedding anniversary, and this is pretty wild, but we're just having this conversation now. This is just a few weeks ago, and someone had taken a video at their wedding. Now, this was 65 years ago. Had taken this video. It was actually in color, which I still don't understand how that happened. But my parents didn't even know about it till like 10 years ago. Somebody came up to them and said, "Oh, did you know that so and so shot this video at your wedding?" And they're like, "No, we didn't know." But we all had it up on the Apple TV. All my cousins were there, and some of them were at the wedding, and my aunts and uncles. And it was really cool just having that experience. And so something like this, where we could actually be intentional about putting it together and having it there, I just think would be a really great thing to continue that legacy for people that, you were saying that, like, your nieces and nephews might not remember your father, and your future children are not going to ever have met him, but you've got this really cool thing that's tangible.
I really appreciate that, Brian. Yeah, the mention of the wedding and how things come up. That in time, yeah, things come up, and you may want to add to the book, or to have others maybe want a copy of their own. But to have that physical book with you, for you to be able to read and have that on the coffee table to open up. The physical book, I'd like to show you over the podcast call. It's recorded if I
Sure, absolutely.
So the physical book itself comes in a magnetic enclosure box. Keep it safe. When you open it up, there's a nice pulley tab right here. Now, the main part about the book that we kind of went into is the binding, which I'll show on the camera. When you open a book up and you look at the binding of the pages, you can see them scored into sections. These are sewn in. It's a hand process where they're setting up the books to be hand sewn into the binding. That way they hold tight. The book is 100 pages. It has a matte, soft lamination, so it's got a silky touch finish. And a bit more on the back of the book, you'll have a photo of your loved one and then 2 quotes. The photo and the quotes that are decided to be put for print are decided through our platform, where when loved ones contribute stories with photos, individuals can read the stories during the contributing period, and they can click a heart badge on the photos that they love. And the photos that get the most hearts during the creative process will be printed on the back of the book. And the quotes that are read and bestowed lotus flowers by highlighting and clicking lotus flower will be put on the back of the book to represent legacy and remembrance. The book itself is organized with the contributions based on readability. So we have our AI go through it, and the stories that go to the front are going to be the vetted stories. And then all photos that are used in the book that exceed the pages, so any excess photos, for instance, will be put in the back of the book in a photo gallery. The book itself comes with the purchase of a creative. So the lead, the person that signs up, gets a copy with the creative, and no other person has to pay to contribute or to join. The lead, the person who initiates the sign up, is the one that commits to the book. And from then, you can just invite family and friends to contribute the photos and stories on the platform, and the engine takes care of the rest. You don't have to worry about scrapbooking or reaching out to users, as the system does all of that for you.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hi there, I'm really excited to tell you about my latest ebook. It's 4 lessons that you can learn from the near-death experience without going through all the trouble of dying to learn them. I've been studying NDEs for several years now. I am completely convinced that not only are they 100% real, but that there's some very universal wisdom that we can get from the near-death experience. And I've distilled that down in this book into 4 short lessons. And I've also given you all the reasons why I believe that NDEs are absolutely real. So go to www.grieftogrowth.com/NDE lessons to pick it up for free. www.growth.com/NDE lessons. I hope you enjoy it. So, we were talking about this. You said, because right now we're recording this, and for transparency for people, we're recording this in late September 2024.
Yep.
It'll probably out by the end of the year anyway, 2024. But by the time people hear this, we'll be coming into the point where it's probably going to be going public very, very soon.
Fantastic.
So what are some of the challenges you've had to overcome? Well, we've already talked about some of them with doing this, but this is a daunting project. I mean, you said you're running the mattress store, you're still running the mattress store, and doing this. And your background, you were going to school for finance, right?
I went to school for finance. I finished in 2021. So my background was finance. With that, I had little anticipation of going into the grief space before I was bestowed my dad's store.
Right.
That path. In terms of hurdles, where we're at, you'd asked me a question earlier, challenges with doing all of this in terms of during grief too, because I'm in grief in the midst. I would say that when you're dealing with grief, it's a different lens that you're looking through. Like, it's a completely different lens. And in the first year or so, isolation was a thing in terms of my friends and isolating with the work and school. But I found in pursuing LifeBooks and in engaging in ways to commemorate my dad, slowly that lens, the fogginess, began to kind of dissipate as I found it kind of a refound purpose. It wasn't lost because it can be recovered in the version of LifeBooks. And there's a gravity to the loss that has slowly dissipated as LifeBooks has transcribed, and my dad's book is currently being made by my family and I right now. So it's been a grand pursuit with running the store, with launching the company, and then dealing with the loss. But purpose has persisted. And I think that's one thing users will have to remind themselves. The purpose is, it's not just for you, it's for them. You're doing it for them. And it's a commitment for future generations, for yourself, because it is an extremely warming project to commemorate a loved one via stories. But you're also creating the book for them, and so that they will never be forgotten. And that should be a prevailing purpose that all users should have with them, that they're creating the life book for their loved ones so that they'll never be forgotten. And with that held, I believe that everyone will want to finish a book for their loved one.
Yeah.
The purpose is there. In terms of challenges in writing, since we've gotten started with the beta, we've issued LifeBooks Guide. I don't think I went through that with you, Brian. You may have seen it when you're in the beta yourself, where it issues prompts and templates. So having our system usher inspirational questions through either lessons learned or family gatherings, holidays, outdoors, career, various questions from various general events to help kind of churn the writing juices. What was a lesson that your loved one bestowed upon you that you continue to share? What was a time that your loved one made the outdoors more memorable and you continue to remember them every time you're outdoors in that moment? Different ways to get writers to keep flowing. That edition was shortly after another beta user actually issued the idea, prompts and questions to help.
Mm-hmm.
And she had helped me refine a list of questions and templates to have the AI usher in for the creative. So getting started, it is a lot in terms of it's a book, it's stories. But if you have a group of 5 people and each of the 5 were to write a two-page story, each of them wrote 10 pages, those stories with a matter of 20 photos would fill the entire book. And the time that we give for contributing stories, 90-day period, so 3 months. We hope that in 3 months that a group could come together, contribute 3 to 5 stories about their loved one, and with a relatively small group and a fair amount of photos, the entire book will be filled. So it's not too intimidating in that the minimum threshold is very minimal.
Mm-hmm.
So we will be able to scale the font, the spacing, the photos to expand the entire horizon of the book.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful, and it's talking about the life books is really important. But other thing I want people to take from this talk with you today is the way that we navigate grief, because grief, as you say, it can be heavy, it can be burdensome, and it is, and then we get the isolation and loneliness. But what I've been so impressed with you, Matt, is you've taken your grief and said, "What am I going to do with this? What am I?" And you've turned it into purpose, and you've turned it into preserving your father's legacy, which has given you this drive to do this thing that you're doing, which is massive. I mean, it's so impressive. So when we go through grief, we don't have to just sit down and crumble, which is an option. We can say, how do I take this and turn it into something beneficial? And I always talk with my clients about, like, whenever we go through something, we can learn from it. We can learn from it. We can grow from it, and we can use it to inspire ourselves. And I've seen you do all 3 of the above.
Thank you, Brian. I really appreciate that. Yeah, highlighting on what is going through grief and what it is, who you are, how you sometimes can lose yourself, because how you walked life, how you saw that through that lens is never the same. Everything is fundamentally changed when you deal with a loss. And I think it's very important for people to engage with the world, to engage in their interests, to re-evoke the fire that was in anything, whether it was an interest in trading cards, or you like to go to the gym, or you like walks, whatever it is. Omission, the act of not acting, has been the most detrimental to me in terms of my pursuit out of the grief. The act of acting, whatever it may be, allows you to figure out what you like, what you don't like, what you want, what you long for, what inspires you. A lot of these things, life is very watered down after loss, almost tasteless. And life is full of taste. Life is full of life. And that abundance is lost when you self-isolate. That abundance is lost when you don't try to engage with the world, because the world shows you what you love, what you like, what your interests are, where your just where your focus lies. It's very difficult to find focus when you're isolated and confined. You find yourself through others, you find yourself through experiences, you find yourself when you look past the past and look forward. It all becomes easier as you just take one step, and omission is the one Achilles heel to that step. It'll hold you in that seat, and I won't stay seated.
Yeah, that's so well said. And speaking of focus, because we can choose what we focus on, and you were faced with the loss of your father you're a young man, so at a young age, and taking over the business, and so you could look at all these and say this is terrible. Look at all these challenges. Life sucks. But instead, you're like, okay, you cherish the memory of your father. You're honoring the memory of your father. You're continuing on with the business, and you've launched something brand new, which I'm sure your father is very, very proud of.
What I give for him to see where we're at. Yeah, it'd be everything. Uh, I would be extremely excited. I'm extremely excited to see him on the other side. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know he's proud of you. I know he's got to be proud of you. And as I said, to launch something brand new and exciting from that loss, and the lotus flower is a perfect emblem for the company, for the book, because the lotus grows out of the muck and it turns into something beautiful.
Absolutely. Lotus flower, a beautiful flower. You see it in the midst of the mud, and it's clean. It's clean as slate. I I really appreciate that, Brian. I really appreciate your understanding also of just the the just how difficult everything has been, and when you're trying to pull an iron out of the fire, it's hot, and trying to make something great out of something so sad has been very daunting. Yes, but the purpose and knowing that it's not just my dad, it's your daughter, my uncle, others, family members. They need their life book. They need to be remembered. There's no future where my dad's story isn't held in the hands of my nephew and niece. So, yeah, just I really appreciate that you have the same denomination as me, in that preserving legacy and their memory is in fact a way to keep them alive.
Hmm.
Um, it's been quite a journey, Brian. It's been quite a journey.
Yeah, I know. I just when I talked to you the first time, you were telling me about what you've gone through. And I've started a company before. So, and for anybody that's listening that has, we know how challenging that can be. And before we started recording, I was asking how your day was, and you were saying, "Oh, well, your day job, your mattress factory job, it's still presenting you with challenges. So you're starting this up while doing something else. But both of these things are continuing your father's legacy. So you're well motivated to do both."
Absolutely. My dad's mattress store was similar to LifeBooks. I never knew that I was going to have to take over the family store.
Hmm.
My older brother, who is he's like my younger brother, I like to say, he didn't have, when we took over, it was him and and I went to school in finance business, and he didn't go to school. He just worked in sales with my dad. So for him, he didn't know much how the business operated, but just knew how to sell. So
Hmm.
I had to come in, and I didn't tell you, Brian, I was served an audit by the state a month into running my dad's business based on my dad's prior business. Disgusting audit, nasty audit, 3 years working at that, while all this too, working
Hmm.
with the state, fighting them.
Hmm.
Um, but the store has gone to a point where I'm able to work on LifeBooks 4 days a week, focus 3 days at the store, and and able to keep this going. In terms of the pursuit for LifeBooks, funding has to come from somewhere, and I got to keep working because I know what the end goal is. And in terms of the taxing nature, I mean, I'm filling my dad's shoes. It would be unlike me if I didn't get my 60 hours in for the week.
Wow. Wow. That's a lot. It's a lot, but I'm sure it's well worthwhile. And it's such a noble pursuit. So I know it's going to do well. And I think you've got I think you have a great vision. It's a great thing. It's a service to people that, and as I said, as far as I know, it's unique. I've looked at other things that are, have elements of it, but not anything that's as put together as this is. And for people that are listening, thinking, and I know so many people when they lose a loved one say, I'd like to write a book. I mean, I talk to them every day. I'd like to write a book, but I don't know where to start. I don't know how to write a book. I don't know how to get it published, whatever. This is something. And I always tell people when they say they want to write a book, I'm like, well, what's your goal? Is it to sell 1 million books? Is it to make money? Is it to preserve your loved one's legacy? What is your goal? And this is a legacy thing. It's very clear. This is not to, we're not publishing this to try to sell millions of copies. This is to do that thing that I think that most of us want to do, is like preserve that legacy and make it available to family members and friends. But also with this help of this artificial engine, this AI engine, which kind of helps prompt you along and does all the heavy lifting for you.
That's it in a nutshell. Brian couldn't have said it better. A book engine that does all the heavy lifting and allows you to seamlessly invite family and friends to make that book. I'm very excited towards our launch in the new year. We're gonna have all the features firing off and everything going. There's a few additions to the new book too, for those that want to do a book for loved ones, not just an individual, but perhaps there's grandparents that pass or parents that pass closely together. You'll be able to make a book for loved ones, so joint death. And we're just excited to see as LifeBooks progresses what people create and what they have in mind in terms of future additions to the book. And grateful anyone that would bite on this apple in terms of the commitment that is to make a book for your loved one. It's a very beautiful process, a 3-month process, engaging and collaborative. And the goal is to make the contributing part easy so that they can focus on what's important, capturing their loved one's story.
Yeah. Well, as we're talking, I know it's still in beta, but again, this is going to be out probably a couple months from now, and it'll be available soon. So let's talk as if it's available. So where do people go? What's the process to get started?
To get started, you just go to lifebooks.io, and as the lead or a family friend of the lead, you can click on the Get Started button and join by either inviting a lead to sign up the family, or if you are the lead, you can sign up with just a $25 deposit towards the actual book. And that deposit will open the creative and allow you to begin inviting family and friends to write, contribute, and share. And then that link will be live as of right now, February 21st.
Okay. Yeah, that's. I think it's again. I was when you first reached out to me, I was like, we have to get on and talk about this, because I know for my audience, for people that want to preserve that legacy, and I think about the obstacles that people have. Well, I don't know how to write. I don't know how to format it. I don't know where to get it printed. All those things, they're all kind of taken care of. So, and even the collaborative part of it, I think is going to be really, really great, because just that people have different stories. People see people from different points of view. So this kind of helps us to put together that they can more of a complete rounded picture of the person that we loved, that we still love, that is, and preserve that legacy. And the book, for people that can't see it, if you're just listening to the podcast, if you go to the YouTube channel and look up the video, you can see it. It's a beautiful beautiful book. I mean, you've done such a good job of making it something that you really want to hold on to.
And if you want to see the demo and how the actual platform works, inviting and contributing and collaborating, we have a demo link on our website at lifebooks.io. You can see a full demo of the Lifebook Creative and how, just behind the engine, how everything works.
Yeah, sounds great. Well, Matt, I think we've kind of covered what we wanted to cover today. Any last thoughts you want to share?
I just want to thank everyone and wish them blessings as we're all in this pursuit to find ourselves out of grief and to remember our loved ones in a special way. So just blessings to anyone that's in that boat and getting to the other side and, seeing the island. I'm hoping that LifeBooks can be a tool to kind of help aid in that journey.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for being here today, man.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian.
Hey there, if you like this episode, come on over and talk about it. Let me know what you liked. If you didn't like this episode, come on over and talk about it. Let me know what you didn't like. Go to grieftogrowth.com/community and look for Talk About the Podcast. I'll see you there.